Hello, everyone. My name is Jen Gervais. I work here at Braver Technology. Welcome to today's webinar about cybersecurity. Thank you for joining us. Cybersecurity is an ever-changing concentration, and it's most important to keep yourself and your organization educated on the latest threats out there. We're going to be running this training quarterly with the most up-to-date information available. So if you have other staff, colleagues, or sister organizations, please feel free to reach out to them and have them join us for our next webinar that will happen in January. This webinar is a listen and learn presentation, but if you have any questions along the way, you can go ahead and enter them in your Q&A box on the platform, and we'll monitor them and answer them as we can. You also have access to drag the video screen around to move it to the best place for your watching preference. And at this point, I'm ready to turn the presentation over to our host, Kenny Rounds, CEO of Braver Technology Solutions.
All right. Thank you very much, Jen. Welcome, everybody. So as Jen said, the big thing that we're looking here is for education. The point of this webinar is to get you and your team up to date on what the security threats are and what can be done to avoid them and hopefully keep your company safe. As you guys, as those of you who are clients of ours know, we've been pushing a lot on cybersecurity and a lot on trying to keep you protected, and this is another step towards that. And we're going to try and do these on a regular basis, as Jen said, at least once a quarter to keep you and your staff. The goal is basically we're going to do them once a quarter for a couple of reasons. One, the landscape changes regularly. We're changing this webinar on a regular basis to keep up to date with current threats and current things that we're seeing. But then also for those of you who have new employees that have started in your firm, maybe since the last webinar, that you have an onboarding with them that you can start with, which is great to use, especially if you are under like any kind of SOC audits or anything like that, where you can say that, hey, yeah, we have all of our staff have been exposed and presented to some kind of cybersecurity training as well. So basically an ongoing education meant to go through. Obviously, if you have any questions in between that, you guys know how to reach out. There'll be contact information. We want to keep this as an open dialogue. Feel free, whether you're a client of ours or not, reach out, ask any questions. What we really care about is keeping everybody secure and trying to, the more we can prevent cybersecurity, the less profitable that industry is, the less likely they are to attack. So with that, let's get going. Quick introduction to you, to those of you who don't know who we are. So Braver Technology Solutions, we're a managed service provider up in the Northeast. We have been around for a little over 30 years now. That is an amazing picture of me on the screen, as you can tell. And basically, we handle all of the Rhode Island, Eastern Massachusetts, and trying to take care of all of our customers' needs. So all you have to do is remember your passwords. Yay. Let's go through. So that is my contact. So let's talk about, there's basically 3 steps in this webinar. So step number 1 is we want to talk about the new challenges in security. So basically the big question is, why now? Why are these, one of the questions we always get is, why do these people do this? Why do they attack our networks? Why are they going after that? And it's very interesting. It's a different landscape than it was even 10 years ago. Next thing we want to talk about is securing your network. What basic steps, what basic blocking and tackling should you have in place to protect your network? And then the third thing we want to go into is, how can you protect your network going forward? This goes into a lot of user education and so forth, which is part of what this webinar is. We're going to give you real life examples of what to look out for. Okay, so with that, and as Jen mentioned, what we'll try and do is I will try and stop periodically for Q&A to see if anything comes up and see. So feel free to pop in questions as they come up. If they're relevant, we'll answer them right away. If not, we'll try and we have some time set aside at the end to see if we can answer them going through. Okay, so why now? Well, what's happened in our industry that's very different is that it used to be just kind of these one-off viruses and so forth, where people would get like the I love you virus, something like that, and it would make the news. It'd be really cool. Somebody would be in a basement and they'd be like, yeah, well, we did it. But there's no real incentive for them to do it other than just be malicious. Well, that's changed now. Now the landscape is that this is actually a for-profit business. So hacking, breaching, social engineering, all of those things are now very profitable. It's a billion-dollar business. So that means that these are actual help wanted ads that are literally live and exist where they're looking for actual hackers. These are mostly overseas. You can probably guess some of the countries. The ones that are typically not friendly to the rest of the world are the ones that are hiring them. And for some of them, this is a major revenue generator for them and the government. So they have plenty of incentive to start doing this. As you can see, there's all sorts of different types of attacks. And just so you don't feel like you're immune, I want to make sure you guys know that this happens to every size company. And I'm going to show you some examples that are recent. Now, the sad part is that it's very rarely is it difficult for me to find any current relevant attacks, which is sad. But so as you can see, this first one is only from about a month ago. And this is Garmin. So Garmin, the entire Garmin site was down and it was hit with ransomware. This is Garmin. They have pretty much an unlimited amount of income for their IT security. They don't really, somebody's not going to question a $200,000 firewall at Garmin, yet it still wasn't enough to protect them and protect their assets. It's really important that you know that because you can spend to a certain amount, but at some point it becomes down to user education. Again, which is what we're focusing on here. In the Garmin industry, like you might have been inconvenienced if you couldn't go for a run and you couldn't update your run tracker or anything like that. But this was actually pretty severe for some industries that rely on it, especially like in aviation. So in aviation, you have to update the database in your plane every 28 days. There are people who could not update the database in their plane, so they literally could not fly because of this ransomware attack. And they were down for a good week and a half on this. Next one that may hit a little more home for some of you guys, which again is just less than a month ago, or maybe just over a month ago on this one, was Jack Daniels. Same thing. They were hit with the ransomware and they were taken offline for a period of time where they could not do anything on their systems. This is a more painful scenario. So this happened over in Germany. And again, as you can see, this one was less than a month ago that it happened, is that a German hospital was hacked and taken offline. They had to redirect all of the ambulances to a different hospital. And in one particular case, there was a patient who passed away because they could not get to the hospital quick enough to get the emergency care that they needed. And it was determined that had they made it to the correct hospital on time, their chances of survival were much higher. And then lastly, this one may have actually hit some of you a little closer, especially those of you in the medical industry or those of you with parents in elderly care facilities that are even local. This one is nationwide. This is a nationwide company. And again, this is only September 28th. This wasn't that long ago. A nationwide company that was hit and taken down across the country. They had to worry about actual exposure of patient PHI information being out there and what got out going through, and they were taken down. And this is still actually recovering. I mean, I was just reading a local facility around us that was still down because of this attack. Even though they weren't part of the USH, they used their system in the back end. So the key thing to take away here is that these guys aren't targeting just small companies, not targeting just big companies. They're targeting everybody. And they're not negotiating ransoms like they used to anymore. It used to be that we could start negotiating them down to a few $1,000s. Our industry can't do that anymore. It's across the board. The other thing to realize is that this is not a problem specific to you. This is not a problem specific to our clients. This is a problem specific to the entire country. This affects every company, every business across the board. So we all need to attack it and try and bring it down. So why now? Why is this profitable? Well, one of the reasons that this is profitable is because of Bitcoin. Before Bitcoin, this could be a coincidence, but I don't think it is. Before Bitcoin, we did not see this level of attacks on networks. Once Bitcoin came in, you now have an untraceable currency that these terrorists can get paid in. once they get the Bitcoin, it's out of the government circulation, it's out of the tracking of the government. So they're going after these companies, and the first thing they're asking for is Bitcoin. And they're sending it over and going through and using it as actual currency. So that's one of the big things that we've seen. Again, maybe we're connecting two dots that don't belong connected, but it seems like an awfully big coincidence that once Bitcoin came up, all of a sudden these attacks came up at the same time. And then we've actually seen it to the point where there's been sites that especially, and this was out in the Vegas area, where computers were actually attacked, and the computers that were attacked weren't actually hit with ransomware or anything like that. They were actually hit and generated as Bitcoin generators on the back end. So what was happening is the attackers were taking over the computers and running applications in the background, not for malicious attacks on the computer, but more just to generate the actual Bitcoins themselves. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is your network and what you should have in your network and what protection should be in place on there. So first thing we're going to start with is the number one line of defense for most of the attacks, which is going to be your firewall. So your firewall is in place to act almost like it's almost like there's a vampire at the door and they can't come in, and the firewall should be set up in a way where basically it says no to everything by default and then allows only certain things in. We're at the point now where on our clients, we want to lock down those firewalls as much as possible. We want to close those ports as much as possible. If you have something in-house, we want to lock it down as much as we can. We're trying to move everything off on there, including email and so forth, so that basically we want to get your firewall to have as little open ports in as possible. With that said, you still have to be wary of things that are inside your network, a good or a third-party vendor. So one thing that I'll talk about is Target. So Target was attacked a couple of years ago, and the thing that most people don't realize is that when Target was attacked and they released a whole bunch of credentials, the way that they were attacked was actually through the HVAC system. So what happened was their HVAC provider attached to the Wi-Fi of the Target system of a particular Target store, and they were allowed to do that through the Target. But what happened was the HVAC vendor themselves were not protected. So somebody actually hacked into the HVAC vendor, then from the HVAC vendor hacked into Target and got into Target's systems. So this is where you need to be really secure. I'm going to go over in a second on one of the things that Target should have done in that scenario. But keep in mind that these are actual real companies with real employees that are really trying to find holes in your network. It's not like the old days where it's just a robot sending out generic emails hoping that they hit somebody. It's literally actual people actually watching your network and watching what you're doing and looking for vulnerabilities. This goes in line with the firewall as well. So your firewall is under constant attack. You just don't realize it because it's blocking everything. So when you look at that firewall and it looks like just a dumb box that's doing nothing on the side, that's not the case. That firewall is constantly protecting you and blocking everything for you. This is why it's important to have an enterprise firewall and to have an actual firewall that is up to date. You can't just use some free thing that came with the internet service provider or came from Staples or anything like that. It has to be up to date. It has to have algorithms that are working in place. This is an image of a firewall. This looks much better in a live presentation, so I'm not going to go into that one. And then let's go over to the next step. So here's one that's become, this is a good example of us updating this webinar going through, is remote access. So this has always been a security point for us. First and foremost, if you have what's called an open RDP port to your network, which is how everybody used to connect to the network. They used to bring up Microsoft RDP connection, connect in, fine. That is such a huge security hole. You really need some kind of SSL VPN to go into your firewall and prevent those users from coming in without some kind of authentication. We've also gone to the next level where we are recommending two-factor authentication on top of the SSL connection. So that means that we want you not only to authenticate to the SSL, not only authenticate to your network, we want you to also have a code on your phone that requires that two-factor authentication. For those of you who are clients of ours, if you don't have that now, reach out to our technical staff and make sure that you ask for it. It doesn't cost anything to do that. It's completely built into the system to get that done. But what we're looking for is this is your remote users. Now more than ever, obviously there's a lot more remote users and a lot more users working remotely. Hence, one of the things that we're updated on this webinar for this scenario is that there's a little more vulnerability. For those of you that are in the construction industry, this also includes everybody who's out in the field at some kind of site, doing some kind of site work. Maybe it's a trailer, maybe it's some kind of job site, maybe it's a truck. That includes remote users. That includes part of the security going through. For those of you that are CPAs that still have people on site at the client sites doing either audits or doing tax work or something like that, they're remote users. They count into this. They're actually, especially if they're connecting into their client's Wi-Fi, now you're adding another variable. You're adding your client's Wi-Fi into your security as well. So better off to have them use a hotspot or something like that you can control. The one thing, if you're not using SSL, is that most of the time SSL, if it's not free, it's extremely low cost. It's a one-time fee. Our clients, we tend to use Sonic Walls. Sonic Wall charges a small one-time fee for that, and that SSL client exists, and it's a small small upfront charge for a huge amount of protection. The other thing I'll talk about is that hosted phones are now, because there's more people working remote, hosted phone systems are becoming much more prevalent. So this is great. You can take the phone everywhere. You can do everything with it. There are some security concerns in that I'm going to touch on a little bit later on in the presentation, but it's great. But keep in mind that these have to be also part of your security awareness part of it. It's great. Like I can take my desk phone, take it off my desk, bring it right home. It works just like it always would. I can use a mobile app. It works just like it does. I can use a web browser to check, to do send and receive phone calls. It's awesome. All those things are awesome, but keep in mind it has to be part of your security system. The other one that's coming in, obviously a lot more prevalent, is all of the video conferencing in GoToMeeting, Zoom, Teams, Uber Conference. Keep in mind that these have to be secure as well. So when you're on the phone and you're doing a meeting, you got to make sure that this is locked down. One of the things that is available, which is really handy, is Zoom security best practices. If you want, we're more than happy to send you a copy of this. You can probably Google it and find it, but if you want it, we're more than happy to send that over to you. Jen and her team will send it out. And what you're looking for in the Zoom best practices is to lock that system down. There's been a lot of breaches, not only with Zoom, with some of the other ones, but the nice part is you can use these best practices for any platform to make sure that they are locked down, that there is a lobby, that there is some kind of passcode, that there is some kind of way to get in, some kind of security going through. Obviously, we did that for this webinar here to make sure that there was no access in here that we didn't know, and then basically so that as we're doing the webinar, we know we're not going to get bombed in some way. Next thing that you've heard us talk about before is having some kind of remote policy, remote access policy, and some kind of acceptable use policy for your home devices. Again, we are really happy to get you a template. You just have to reach out to us, let us know. We're more than happy to send you a template that you can modify and use for your own network. Again, where a lot of the employees are working from home, it's important that you have this in place so that you can set ground rules and set boundaries. What do you want them to do on the office computer that they couldn't do before? That's the important part going through. We're going to talk a little bit more on home computers and home users a little bit later on when we get into user education as well. Antivirus is really key. Obviously, you should have antivirus in place. I can't believe that I have to even say this. It's incredibly important that you have AV in place and that it's up to date and it's monitored on a regular basis. We are still coming across new clients that, believe it or not, do not have adequate AV. They have something that they came free with the computer. They have something that they bought at Staples for $30. Nobody's monitoring it. Nobody's watching it. That gives you minimal protection. And it's amazing that we still take on clients that have that. And that's one of the things that we have to talk to them about. Next, I want to talk about email spam and virus filtering. So those of our clients that have in-house Exchange, you are getting that. We're actually going to need to update that to some newer platform. But the more important one is the Office 365. So Office 365 has different levels of spam filtering. The default level that comes with it is very minimal. What you really want to have in place is advanced threat protection from Office 365. It's a small add-on. It's like $2. It's not it's not going to cost you a huge amount of money to protect your network. It's going to give you a lot of security. Here's an example of email stats. This is one from one of our own servers. As you can see, 60 million emails have been processed by this particular spam and virus server. Of that 60 million, only 17 million were actual valid emails. 38 million of them were totally blocked altogether as not even being close to being email. And then we have rate controls and everything else going through. So that means the majority of emails coming in are not valid. So when you complain about a lot of, seeing spam and so forth, it is annoying, but you wouldn't believe how much spam you're not seeing as part of it. The other thing that we're seeing is that the email vendors are actually sometimes are tightening down their belts a little too much. And so we're now seeing a battle. It goes back and forth where they over tighten them. They realize that they're having too many false positives, then they backtrack it. And essentially the bad guys are coming in and trying to thwart all of the spam filtering. They do tests. So what you'll see, and you've probably seen this, you've probably seen an email come in that had nothing in it. It was completely blank. There was nothing in it. Why would you get a blank email from somebody? There's no purpose for that. Well, there is. What they're actually doing is they're looking for a bounce back. They're looking to say, okay, is this a valid email address? You don't have control over that. Unfortunately, the email system's going to deliver it to you thinking that you're expecting this blank email. But now what they see is they actually now see that, oh, all right, this is an email address. It's active because I didn't get declined. I didn't get a bounce back. They're constantly testing the systems and testing the water. They're like a little kid testing the parents' limits to see how far they can go with them. Next thing that we have in place is DNS filtering. So the way the DNS filtering works is basically, and again, we have this enabled for all of our clients going through. So if you're one of our clients, you have this enabled going through. And what we're doing is when you go out to a website, if it's known to be malicious or known to be phishing, it's actually going to block you on that website. So you're not gonna be able to get there. You're gonna see a message like this that looks like this. Now, the interesting thing that we've noticed with the DNS filtering is that it tends to do a lot more blocking than the people see. So when we show them a report like the one in front of you that says, hey, these are all the times that you've been blocked, they'll come back and say, well, none of my users have seen a block. Well, what they're actually seeing is when you go to a site, which is like an msm.com or something like that, and you click on an article, and then underneath that article, you see another article that says 1980s heartthrobs, what do they look like now? And then you click on that one because, who doesn't want to see that? So now you're clicking on that one. Now you're outside of MSN. You're outside of their protection. You're at some third-party site that you don't know about. That's the one that has all the links on it that are malicious. So the DNS filtering, what we've noticed, is blocking a lot of those ad websites. And so you're not even seeing those links altogether. Is it foolproof? By no means it's not. But at least it's blocking the ones that are known. So at least it's one more layer going through. I was asked once to put in an actual picture of 80s heartthrobs to follow up with that statement. So here they are. Take a screenshot if you want. All right. Let's go into the next one. We're going to go into wireless. So wireless is huge right now. So obviously your network most likely has some kind of wireless on it. Here's what we want to talk about on the Wi-Fi side of it is that you need to make sure that you have a guest Wi-Fi set up. And that guest Wi-Fi should be used more than the internal Wi-Fi. What should go on the guest Wi-Fi? Anything that doesn't need to access your servers. So people's smartphones, people's tablets, whatever's on that network, whatever's on that Wi-Fi that doesn't need access to your servers and your data should be on the guest Wi-Fi, not on the internal Wi-Fi. Why is that? Well, think about it. If this phone is on that Wi-Fi, you're not protecting this phone. That user's phone is now a gateway into your network. You don't want that on your live network. You want that on a guest Wi-Fi. How do you lock it down? The cat's out of the bag. All right, everybody's already connected to our internal Wi-Fi. Well, it's pretty easy. Just change the password of your internal Wi-Fi to something else. When they come up and say, hey, listen, I can't connect my phone to the Wi-Fi, you say, oh, all right, well, here's the guest Wi-Fi password. Here's where you should be connecting through. And then make sure that the internal Wi-Fi is limited only to those devices that require it, like notebooks and so forth. Remember I was telling you the story about the Target HVAC? Same thing. That should be done on a guest Wi-Fi. That should not be done on the internal network, which is where their fault lied on that particular scenario. Obviously, you should also have them heavily encrypted, heavily passworded, and make sure they're at the latest technology for attacks, and they should be updated. What we recommend on the Wi-Fi side is basically try to avoid, if you can, those little Netgear routers, those Linksys ones, whatever they be that you're going to get from Best Buy and Target. They're not going to typically have that same layer of security as some of the more robust ones that we have. And to be honest with you, the more robust ones we have, usually around the same price. So it's not that big of it's not really a big upcharge to go to an actual corporate level Wi-Fi. We have different level Wi-Fis depending on the security. Some of you might be governed by certain HIPAA regulations, SEC regulations. We have a different level Wi-Fi that hits those regulations as well, that has much more stricter requirements in place. All right, so on your server, you want to make sure there's regular patching on your server and that it's monitored. Obviously, we do that on a regular basis for our clients. And we go in and check them at least twice a month. The other thing you want to make sure of, which is obviously extremely important, is you want to make sure there's some kind of disaster recovery imaging in place. I'm going to talk about a couple things on this because I want to make sure this is not assumed. Number one, your recovery should be image-based, not file-based. So all the imaging that we do, all the backup that we do is all image-based. That means that if there's an issue with your server, we can spin up your server, not just get the files from it. We can literally attach a device to that backup and spin it up. The other thing I want to talk about is what the backup device they should go to. It used to be that you could just plug in a USB drive onto the server and that would be fine. Those days are gone. What happens now is that USB drive is now more susceptible for attack and more susceptible for failure. We highly recommend that everybody has a network attached storage device that allows us to do a few things. One, it allows us to add some more layers of security, some more hoops that have to go through for an attacker before they can get at your backup images. Because guess what? If somebody gets into your network, guess what they're going to go after first? They're not going to go after your data. They're not going to go after your servers. They're going to go after your backups. Why do they want to go after your backups? They want to make sure you can't restore. So we need to make sure the barriers in place to keep that network attached storage device separated as much as possible and as difficult for them to get to as possible. You can't do that with a USB drive. It's just attached to the server. It's also faster. So if there is ever an issue and you need to spin up your server, we can actually take that network attached storage device, connect it to another server, and actually spin up that server right away. All right. So let's talk about the next step. Offsite. So Offsite used to be for just our clients that were worried about their building not being accessed to, flood, fire, hurricane, tornado, whatever. That is no longer the case. Obviously, it's still protected on those, but now the bigger threat that we see that we recommend Offsite for is ransomware attacks. Essentially, if somebody gets into your network, and like I said, they're going to go after your backups first. They're going to go after your backups. They're going to encrypt your backups. Then once they encrypt your backups, then they're going to start encrypting your data. Well, so far, the only way to protect yourself on that is to have a copy of your data offsite that they can't get to. The way offsite data works is it sends the data one way. It can't go the other way. So the attackers can't go back, can't get in there and get at it. It's just one-way transaction. The way that we recommend it and the way that we do it for our clients is the same thing as the local. We send a whole image of the server offsite, not just individual files. So some clients that we talk to, they have file level things like Carbonite or whatever that they might say, like, oh, this is really cheap, it sends it off. But that's only file level. That's not going to help you a whole lot if you need to spin your server up. It'll get you some individual files. It'll take a few days to get it. Our scenario, we can actually spin our entire client server up in the cloud. So what will happen is they can work temporarily on the cloud environment while we're waiting for the data to come back down to their local environment so we can rebuild their server. So it's an entire image that goes offsite. All right. So that's the network as a whole. That's what you should have in place. What we do, and those of you that are clients, you really want to keep your eye out for this, is we send now monthly security scorecards to our clients. These scorecards are updated every single month, and they're updated two ways. One, with a score of your environment, but then two, any new items that we think are relevant to our clients as a whole. So we send these to our clients once a month. You really need to look at these, pay attention to them so you know what we know. That's the idea. We're trying to share the information with you so that you know exactly what to look at, saying, okay, yeah, this is what I have in place. This is what I should do to fix it, and this is what it takes. Our engineers are going to be in touch with it. Like I said, we're sending these out on a monthly basis to all of our clients. Okay, so let's go to the next step. We're going to go into some real life examples in here. So here's the key thing: is that these attacks happen to every single entity. And unfortunately, they happen to big entities. And unfortunately, it happens so often that they don't even make the news as much as they should anymore. These are happening every single day. Probably one of the biggest targets is Facebook. So here's an interesting question: is if Facebook is targeted that much, and if Facebook is breached that much, which they have been breached, one, why haven't you heard about it? And two, why do you care? So why haven't you heard about it? Well, because I don't know, Facebook's really good at PR and dampening down. But number two is the important one: is why do you care? So why do you care is that there's a lot of data on Facebook that I really want access to if I'm a hacker. There's a lot of information up there. What kind of information is up there? Well, I have where you work, I have your maiden name, I have where you grew up, I probably have the school that you went to. I have a whole bunch of information about you that I can then use. I know your pets' names. I know your birth date. I know all the stuff that's on Facebook when I get in there. So why do you care if I know that? Well, I can use that information really easily. So all I have to do is use the information that I have on Facebook, and I can start using that as social engineering to break into your accounts. I can get possibly into your bank account. I can get into your credit card account. I can get into your Best Buy account. I can get into all those accounts, because a lot of those accounts, the security questions are what's already in your Facebook. Okay, so that's step number one. But what's another reason I care? Well, I care because if I have your username and your password for Facebook, people are creatures of habit. So chances are really good that whatever password you used for Facebook, whatever password you used for your Target account, whatever password you used for your Best Buy account, whatever the entity is that's been breached, there's a good chance that you used a version of that password for your office. You used your pet's name, you used your birthday, you used your street you grew up on, you used some form of that. Well, now, number one, I'm just going to try it right away. So guess what's on Facebook? I know where you work. So I'm gonna now start attacking your office that you work at. Well, what's your username? Well, I can pretty much guess your username. Your username is either going to be first initial, last name, first name, last initial, first name, last name. It's going to be some version of that, most likely. So I know where to go. I know what email system you can use, because that's public knowledge on what email system you use. You're either using internal Exchange, Office 365, or G Suite, or something like that. I can find that out. That's not actually hidden information. That's actually public information. So now I know where I want to attack. I know most likely what a username is, and I know what most likely part of your password is. So I can start doing variations of that and start using variations of that to get in to your system. So that now makes entities like Facebook, when there's a data breach there, that becomes much more important and becomes much more critical than what you might expect. And we've done this presentation with state troopers before, and one of the times that we did it, one of the state troopers had a really relevant scenario where there was an actual legitimate case that he had, where a woman's bank account was broken into and breached, and all the data, all the money was transferred. And in this particular case, they tracked it down to a 16-year-old in the next town over. So she was in the next state over. And come to find out that the 16-year-old actually got the information because he got into her Facebook account. From her Facebook account, he got all the information he needed to do a password reset on her actual account, and then got into her bank account and transferred the money that way. It's one of the rare cases where they're able to get the money back. Most of the time they don't. Most of the time that money gets transferred by an actual organization, which then transfers it right into Bitcoin and sends it out. So again, we care about these data breaches as a company. Even though they might look like they're at a personal level, they're critical. Speaking of data breaches, they still happen on a regular basis. As you can see, just a month ago, Staples breached. So all of you that had credentials at Staples, there's a chance that got out there. And again, it's all the same things that I'm worried about. Like they have your business email address, your home email address, whatever it may be. They're going to start using that to start digging in. All right, and here's a site that tracks breaches. As you can see, there's Facebook has been huge. Marriott Hotels had an enormous one. That was actually SPG. Marriott inherited that one. Let's talk about the web and what happens with that information once they have it. So there's basically 3 layers of web that the industry kind of talked about, kind of summarized them. So number 1 is the one that you see and use on a regular basis, which would be Facebook, email, Instagram, all of those things, all the lying ones. Then there's another layer where you don't see. That layer is protected. So that would be like bank accounts, credit card statements, any kind of corporate documents. Maybe you're an investment firm and you have a portal. That's where the documents portal. So those are kind of in like a secure area where you can't just browse to them and get them. You have to actually have credentials to get in. But then we have the area that we're really worried about, and this is called the dark web. Dark web is where all the bad guys happen. And this, if this were a location, this would be the back alley behind the park. This is where all the guns are traded. This is where all the human trafficking happens, illegal drugs. All the bad stuff happens on the dark web. This is also typically where your credentials end up. So a lot of times when these breaches occur, the Staples one, the Target one, the Facebook one, it's a couple different things that could happen. One, the people who breach those accounts are going to take that data and use it themselves. But the other thing that they might do is they're going to take that data and they're actually going to sell it on the dark web. They're actually going to put it up for auction, up for bid, and somebody else is going to bid on it and buy that breach data from them, and then take that breach data and use it to their advantage to some form, whether it be phishing emails, trying to break in, or something along that lines. That all happens on the dark web. The dark web is not something that you can just get to. It's not something you can browse to. You need a special torrent type of browser to get on there. But more than just having the special torrent browser, you actually have to be invited. Somebody has to send you a link. It's not like you can go to Google and search, hey, drug trafficking. Somebody who does the drug trafficking has to know you and give you a link to get in there and how to get that data. Those of you who remember Snowden and when he left the NSA and when he was talking securely to reporters and so forth, he was actually talking on the dark web level, so the NSA couldn't catch him going through. And that's that level. That's what we're worried about. It used to be that they would get the credentials and just publish them on the dark web. We don't see that a lot anymore. So we used to do a lot of dark web scanning for our clients. To be honest with you, it stopped coming up with any results. So it was just a money grab at that point. So we just kind of canceled that service. And to be honest with you, the bigger protection against this is changing your passwords regularly and doing 2-factor authentication. You're going to hear me pound this into you in a little bit, but it's so important. Changing your passwords, 2-factor authentication. If there's anything you leave this webinar with, it's change your passwords, 2-factor authentication. Can't drill that into you enough. Number one security thing that you can do to protect yourself. Okay, so that's the dark web. That's the type of things that are on the dark web, and that's where it exists. All right, and this is just a tracking of the infections. This is what a dark web scan looks like. All right, so now we're going to get into the most important part of the section, which is the user education. This is where no matter what you do, we do, anybody does to protect themselves, the biggest vulnerability in cybersecurity is the actual users themselves. They're the ones who have the keys to do their job, to do what they need to do, and we can't block them from doing that. So that's where the hackers are going after. They're going after the users. So what we're going to do is show you some examples, real-life examples that we want to make sure your users know and see and look out for on a regular basis. So first thing we're going to look at is when you go to a site and there's pop-ups and click. So obviously what we're looking for in this one is, number one, your users shouldn't be here. If they're on a site like this, it means they're downloading something that's not authorized. They shouldn't be doing this on work computer anyways. So as you can see, there's a million buttons on here. The chances of them clicking the one that is actually the one that downloads the program is slim to none. So chances are they're going to download an infection. Next thing to look for is a pop-up. So what these come up as is typically when you type in the wrong website. These pop-ups will come in. You type in Amazon with an S or something like that. You're going to get this site. Somebody bought the domain. And what they're looking for is for you to call that phone number and look for tech support. And, God help our little users. We've actually had instances where our clients' users have done this, where they've called the support, and got down the road, luckily stopped themselves before they got too far, but they were almost about to install an application on their system that was going to give this remote user access into their application. They thought they were calling support. It's amazing. It was only like a 15, 20 user site, so they knew that there wasn't support. They knew the person who did support. We also want to make sure that if you see a pop-up window like this, it's the same thing. It's made to look malicious. It's made to look going through. There's two buttons on here, allow and don't allow. Both of those buttons do the same thing. They both infect your computer. What you're really looking to do is to click the red X or reboot the computer as a whole. Just get out of there altogether. If you are ever in doubt, or any of your clients' computers are ever in doubt, first thing that we're going to tell you is either power it down or disconnect the network cable. So keep that in mind. If you think there's anything suspicious at all, right away, power it down, disconnect the network cable. All right, emails. Emails are right now the #1 form of attack that everybody is seeing across the board. And what's happening with these emails is that they're coming in forms that look like normal emails to the spam and virus filtering systems. So there's nothing in these spam and virus filtering systems to make them. It's not like there's an attachment they can scan. It's not like there's a lot of things they can look for. So if you look like an email like this is just a normal email. This could be a real Amazon email. Obviously, this one isn't. So the spam and virus filter, they don't see anything on here that's a trigger to them. They just see a regular email. What do you see? Well, I see a domain name that doesn't exist. So there's an Amazon without an A in there. That's not right. There's a generic username in there. There's a website link that looks like it's okay, but then when you hover your mouse over it, you see that it doesn't go to Amazon. It goes to someplace totally different. Again, this is too difficult for the spam and virus filters to pick up at this point in time. Here's another one again. Looks like it's from Citibank. It's not. What you're looking for is when you hover your mouse over that link down below, it doesn't actually take you to Citibank, even though it says it does. That's a flaw in HTML. Not really a flaw, it's the way HTML works. All right, so let's talk about actual phishing emails. So what we've found, which is amazing, is the phishing emails that work the best are not the ones like this one, the ones that look like actual emails. The ones that work the best are the ones that look like nothing at all. We had web developers developing emails that looked exactly like HTML emails, sent them out as test phishing emails. We had a small amount of clicks on those. We then said, okay, let's take just a generic email message like the one you see right here. Let's send this one out. This one had a high click rate. And it's because it's just so unassuming. This is what you're looking for. This is the way they're going to attack you right now, is they make this look like just a generic email that there's nothing mundane about. They might ask you for a password reset. They might say they're sending you a secure email message. It's going to look like a bunch of things. And even if it comes, this is really important, even if it comes from somebody you know, do not open that link. The other thing I'm going to say, which is unfortunate, you can't just reply back to that person either and say, hey, did you send this to me? Because what's happening, if their email account has been breached, it means that there's a live person now sending these out. When they respond back, that live hacker is now going to be the one responding, say, yeah, no, totally click on that. That's a legitimate email message. You cannot email back. You have to get on the phone and talk to the person. What's happening is basically when an email breach occurs, and the way an email breach occurs is that somebody clicks on a link like this, they give away their credentials, they give away their username and password. That hacker is going to get into your system, into your email system, and they're not going to do anything right away. They're just going to sit and watch emails come back and forth, and they're going to look for the time to pounce. What are they going to look for? They're looking for some key things in there. They're looking, most likely, what they really hope for is they hope you go on vacation. They really hope you go on vacation, because once you go on vacation, that's when they're going to come in and start attacking. And what they're going to do is they're going to start emailing out to people on your behalf. They're going to set up a folder in that inbox to copy all the emails to themselves. They're going to delete the emails that they sent so you don't see them being sent. They're going to actually go in, and then when people respond back, they're going to have a person. Keep in mind, this is a billion-dollar industry. It's a trillion-dollar industry. They actually have the money to pay somebody to sit and pretend to be you. That's not a problem for them. They can afford it. This is third world countries. They don't have a high cost of labor in there. That person's going to email back and forth saying, yeah, totally. You definitely want to click on that. You definitely want to go through. They're going to do all of these things when they're in your system. So just replying back to somebody that you got a suspicious email from is not enough. You have to call them. You have to call their office. Say, hey, listen, is this person around? I need to talk to them. When you call them and you get them, so we do marketing campaigns, and all the time, and sometimes we'll get an email back from somebody that it's not a client of ours. It's just that somebody on the marketing campaign, and it's an email like this. We call their office and we say, hey, is Joe in? And they're like, no, Joe's on vacation. I said, all right, well, next thing we need to talk to is somebody in charge of IT, because somebody's sending an email out as Joe right now, which tells me that they're probably breached. Unfortunately, that happens quite often. So keep in mind that it's not enough just to look at this. You can't reply back anymore. You have to be diligent. Another one that was really popular is this one right here. I love this one because I think it's kind of interesting that some of the people that get tricked on this one. So obviously this is a voicemail message that came in via an email, right? It's an attachment. We've actually seen people click on this whose phone system doesn't even have this capability. Literally, they don't have the ability to check voicemail via email, and yet they're still checking their voicemail via email. So next one that I want to talk about, and I'm going to go a little bit quicker because I don't want to run out of time here, is social engineering. What social engineering is actually people on the other line actually pretending to be you, pretending to be your vendor, pretending to be your customer. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but basically, let's say you are a construction worker and you're working on a particular project, and that project is a public project. It happens to be, let's say, a bridge. And there's various aspects of that project going on, and so if I'm social engineering, I'm going to call the company that's doing the bridge, because it was in the paper that they were awarded the contract. And I'm going to ask them, I'm going to say, hey, yeah, I just want to let you know, thank you very much. I'm with such and such a town. I'm checking on the status of this construction that's going on. And they'll say, oh, yeah, no, it's going great. We're about to start. It's like, okay, well, listen, I have to get the checks ready to prepare that. So can you tell me what the next phase is, when you think that phase will be done, and how much I should have the check ready for? Person in AR is more than happy to get that because they love getting paid. So they give them the information. Now what happens? Well, you get closer to that date, they call up the government agency and say, hey, listen, yeah, this is such and such with XYZ Construction. We're building a bridge for you. That bridge, we're near this phase. As you know, when we're at this phase, this amount is due. Just want to let you know that we're at that phase now. This amount is due, and here's the way to send us the money, and here's our wire information. And now, obviously, what happened was somebody was just socially engineered to send out that information. It may seem a little far-fetched, but it's actually happened in real life. And this has happened. You can see on the screen where it's actually happened in real life. This is just one that's been public. It happens all the time. Another one that was public is one of the Shark Tanks. Again, she was duped into sending a wire transfer out. Same exact scenario I just gave you. Same exact scenario where somebody called in and social engineered one way or the other to get information about a particular thing that they were working on, and ended up giving them false wire information. What do you need to do? Talk to your bank. We put up some 8 tips for wire security here. What you really want to do is work with your bank to make sure that you have protection in place to not wire the information. Because once that money is wired, guess what they do? They send it over to Bitcoin. They take the wired money, transfer it to Bitcoin. The money's gone. All right. Next thing, there's no good answer to this one right now, because it's going to be a constant battle between marketing and security. But essentially, if you think about your web page, what's on your web page? Everything I need to do social engineering on you. I have a list of your customers because you're really proud of your customers. I have a list of your vendors because you're really proud of your vendors. And I have a list of everybody who works at your site because you're really key at putting at least the key people on your website. That's all I need to socially engineer you. I just need to call up and say, hey, yeah, this is such and such from Johnson & Johnson. I know you're working on a project for us. Blah, blah, blah. Just go down, and now I have all the information off your website that I really need to do to social engineer you and pretend that I'm a client of yours. Do I have a good answer for that? No, I don't. We limit the information that we put on our website, but we still put some on there that, if we locked it down, it's that finding that balance between being friendly and also being secure. I'm going to talk about some spear phishing emails. These are emails that are sent where, again, there's a live person on the other end of the screen. So what we're looking at is these are emails that were sent to clients, actual emails that were taken where they've been socially engineered or tried to go through. Popular one that's come out is actually, believe it or not, iTunes gift cards. We still see this one every few times a year where somebody will be socially engineered to try and say, hey, listen, when you're available, can you give us a call? Can you do something for me? It's going to seem kind of odd. Can you go get some iTunes gift cards for me? All right, well, why would I get iTunes gift cards for you? Oh, well, I'm in a client. I think it would really win them over. Believe it or not, there are people who actually still, it's so believable that they will actually do this and they will go for it. And if you've been victim of it, you're not alone. You're not the only one. This has actually happened on a regular basis, and it still happens. What's another popular one? Another popular one, and this is especially if there's been an email breach, but they'll do this from a bogus email that looks like it. So say John Smith is the CEO. They'll check when John Smith is on vacation, and they'll send out an email as John Smith, and they'll say, hey, listen, I have a new bank. I just need you to update my payroll information. AP person says, okay, can you send me a canceled check? The person says, yeah, I can send you a canceled check. Sure. They send a canceled check. Next thing you know, that person's payroll is going right into a bank account that, again, of course, goes out into Bitcoin. So if you are in the HR and you're in charge of payroll, especially, again, with those of you in construction sites, a lot of our construction clients do payroll in-house because they want to do job costing. They're more susceptible to this than some, but not a lot more. It's actually pretty common, unfortunately, that these fake payroll requests come in. Another one we've seen is fake invoices. So again, if I go to your website, I know exactly who your clients are or who your key clients are. It's easy enough for me to send a fake invoice to your client saying, hey, listen, this is due. Here's the link to the wire instructions. Especially if your email's been breached, then I really can do it. I can really send some fake invoices that actually might be legitimate invoices, but I just give them a different place to send it to. All right, so let's talk about one of the things that we're doing in our office to help out our clients is that we, starting this month, we're rolling out test phishing and test training to all of our clients. As you can see, the number one way that these guys are attacking everybody in the country is through phishing emails. So what do? We're gonna start sending out test phishing emails to our clients. If you're one of our clients, you're on that list. If you want to be moved up, just let us know. We'll try and move you up sooner in the list. We're rolling it out across all of them. It's not only phishing, but it's training. If one of your users click on it, they're actually going to be trained. Okay, this is why you clicked on it. This is what we want you to see. This is what we want you to look out for going through. Next thing I talked about, two-factor authentication. Try and get two-factor authentication on everything you do. If you're a CPA firm, one thing I want you to be aware of, and this actually unfortunately happened to one of our colleagues in a different part of the country, one of their clients who was a CPA firm got breached. That CPA firm had access to all of their clients' QuickBooks Online account. They used the CPA firm to get into the client's QuickBooks Online account and got into all of their clients' QuickBooks Online. That could have been prevented if they just set up two-factor authentication on the QuickBooks Online account. Could have been an easy fix. So if you're in that situation, either if you have QuickBooks Online or if you have an accounting package, see if it supports two-factor authentication, and make sure that every application that you have has some form of two-factor authentication. This is especially important for email. This is why we used to tell our clients that there's no real difference between on-premise Exchange and Office 365. That's no longer the case. Office 365 is much more secure now. We are now going forward, basically, as all of our clients that we're visiting, we're strongly recommending that they move to Office 365. Two-factor authentication, completely free with Office 365. There's no charge for it. They used to charge for it years ago. They don't now. This really needs to be enabled. If you don't have it, reach out to us right away. We want to make sure you have it. It's part of our security scorecard, because if you don't have it, chances are our engineers are telling you that you don't have it. Please, please, please set this up. I can't stress this enough. Really need two-factor authentication and regular password changing. I know I've said it. That's a key thing I want you to take away from here. On your local server, disable old user accounts. When somebody leaves your organization, it's common for you to leave the account enabled. I get it. You want somebody else to have access into it and so forth. What we need you to do is tell us when you're done with it. Tell us so we can disable that account. Anytime there's that account, it still is a hole into your network that username still exists. Change passwords regularly, two-factor authentication, set password complexity, set password length, user education. Next thing I want to talk about is cybersecurity insurance. I'm not going to be one to push insurance on everybody, but I am going to tell you that you really should have cybersecurity insurance. This is going to save you if you get attacked. These guys are going to have a team that's going to help you. Maybe you need to notify your clients. They're going to help you if you notify your clients. They're going to help pay for the claim, obviously, which is fairly important. It's really important that you have cybersecurity insurance. Again, I'm not one to overinsure or anything like that, but I can't stress it enough. It's really key for you. Cybersecurity tips. We send out weekly cybersecurity tips to all of our clients. If you're not on this list, let us know. We'll put you on it and make sure that you get it. You don't have to be one of our clients to get it. We'll send it to everybody. So you want to sign up for cybersecurity tips? Every week we send out a new cybersecurity tip to keep you up to date. All right. This is one of the new things that's coming up with COVID is bring your own device. So what happened? Well, basically, when COVID hit, a whole bunch of people wanted to work remote. Once they started working remote, companies realized that they didn't have enough notebooks to hand out. So they're like, okay, let's go buy notebooks. What happened? Well, there was all of a sudden an industry shortage of notebooks. There's no notebooks available. So our customers or everybody's clients, what they started doing is saying, okay, well, just use your home computer. That made sense. It's what you had to do. Here's the problem. When you use the home computer, it's not something that's controlled by your network. So we don't know what antivirus protection is on there. We don't know if the AV is up to date. We don't know what malware protection is on there. We don't know if it's been security patched. We don't know what operating system it is. It's not monitored. We don't know anything about this device. Well, guess what? This device is on your network. Once you connect in the SSL, this is no longer just some random device. This is a network that's now on your device. We have to worry about the security of this device on your network. So we want to make sure that those personal devices, number one, first and foremost, we're at a point now where you shouldn't be that way anymore. So we're going through a little bit of a glut right now of notebooks because of the back to school rush that's dying down. You should have company notebooks. If you plan on having your users work remotely, they should be on company devices that can be monitored, maintained, and patched. It should not be bring your own device anymore. Let's go into the assumption that you're still in the process of doing that. What should you do? Make sure that they have screensavers locked. Make sure they lock the computer when they walk away. This is a computer that's at their house. There's other people walking around. There's kids walking around. There's spouses walking around, in-laws, whatever it may be. Make sure they lock it. This has your data on it. This is your confidential data, your work data that's on their screen that's just logged in and left open. They might be working on a kitchen table, a dining room table, whatever it is, some common area. Same thing with the eavesdropping. Keep in mind that when you're working from home, they can hear every conversation that's going on and what they're talking about. Get them to change the passwords. Again, they're not on the domain. We can't control them. We can't force those password changes. You need to have them manually change their passwords. You need to make sure that they have a strong password. Some of these home computers don't even have a password in place. You got to make sure that your users, if they're using their own devices, they have to adhere by your conditions. That's where that remote use policy came into that we talked about earlier. Don't let them store any documents on them. So basically what we're running into now is that users are working remotely, they're storing files on the local computers. Oh my gosh, we can't control that. Like, you can't control that. You don't know what's going on with that file. If somebody gets breached on that computer, your file is gone off to the now you have a file that could be out of sync with other users. You have a file that's not backed up anymore. Those files should be in some kind of centrally stored location, some kind of central location. It's no different than when you were in your office. Those files need to be located because they're company documents. It's your job to protect those company documents, make sure they're backed up, make sure that they're protected. When people start copying to their home devices or a USB drive, they're out of your control. All right, so the file sharing software, I'm gonna skip over this for time's sake, but basically we worry about it. Even ShareFile, which is a pretty major vendor, just had a major security breach, unfortunately, not that long ago. So keep in mind as well, when your client, so ideally what we want is when a home user is connected, we would love them ideally to be on a separate Wi-Fi connection from everybody else in the house. We get it. It's not often the case. It's very rare the case. Why do we want that? Well, think about all the other devices that are on that home network. Once that VPN SSL connection, there's a gateway from those devices to your network, and you don't have control over those devices. So now there's a connection between their home computer, their home devices, and your network. We want to avoid that. Again, it's not always possible to separate Wi-Fi, but that's the ideal scenario. On their home Wi-Fi, obviously now we have to worry about their home Wi-Fi, because guess what? They have a neighbor. They have somebody who's within reach of it. We have to worry about their Wi-Fi being breached, somebody breaching their Wi-Fi, getting into their computer, whether it's an office computer or a home computer, and getting into your network. So now your responsibility is now extended into their home Wi-Fi system and what's in their Wi-Fi. So you got to make sure that they have a strong Wi-Fi password, make sure they have some kind of firewall in place. It's ideal. Those of you who have construction sites, it'd be ideal if you had an actual sonic wall or some kind of firewall at that construction site. Home users, it's cost prohibitive. We get it. But you have to realize that the security risk is there. Other things that we see, and we notice this a little bit more at the beginning than we're noticing before, is like people with internet connections getting dropped off and dropped down. Keep in mind, you're now competing with everything else on that home network. So kids streaming, Netflix, Hulu, whatever, they're basically like an internet vampire, just taking that data and that bandwidth from that user being able to work. We do have a top 10 free guide report that you can request that'll help you through a couple of assets. It's not going to go in the same detail as this webinar going through, but it'll give you some top level stuff. Do want to talk about hosted VoIP. So I talked about this a little bit earlier on. So hosted VoIP, again, amazing. Obviously, we use it. We sell a system that is hosted VoIP. Many of our clients are on it. Here's one thing that we mentioned to our clients early on, and we want to keep mentioning it to it. 911. So hosted VoIP. If I take my desk phone, bring it home, use it. If I take my application, bring it home, my app, my web browser, whatever, and use it, keep in mind that there's a one issue with that, which is 911. So if you dial 911, that address on that device is going to resolve to your business address. It's not going to resolve to your home address. That's obviously a huge concern, especially if you have young kids. So what you need to do is make sure that everybody in your family knows this is not a 911 device. Better yet, just put the phone away altogether. One way that you can check with your 911 is you can dial 933, and that'll tell you what address is registered to 911, which is kind of cool. So you can do that without dialing 911. Please don't dial 911. Unless it is an emergency. But you can dial 933 and it'll tell you what address it's registered to. Like I said, best bet, put the phone away. If not, make sure everybody in the family knows that this phone should not be used for 911. All right, our blogs, keep up to date on our blogs. We constantly update those with new information and new cybersecurity information. We have a return to work guide. So those of you that are starting to bring your workforce back in, if you want a checklist, a guide, you can reach out to us. We're more than happy to send you that. We also have a guide. So this is a federal document to help ransomware. If you guys want a copy of this, we're more than happy to send this to you as well. So this is more of a guide from the actual FBI to say, okay, this is how you can protect yourself from a ransomware attack, and also an incident response plan as well. And I believe that is the end of the presentation. So let's talk about what we went over. So first off, we talked about why are you under attack? What's happened? Why are you being victimized? Next thing we talked about is how to secure your network. What parts of your network do you need to go through? So basically, what do you need to do? If there's some things on that list that you don't have, those are the basic blocking and tackling that you want. And then user education. Basically, how do you keep your users protected? So what I want to stress with you is that basically right now, more than ever, having a secure work environment is extremely important. The attackers are out. They're going after you, big, small, and different. They're looking for your vulnerabilities. What you want to do is you can never make yourself impregnable to them. We showed you that. There's clients that have unlimited budgets that can be attacked. What can you do? You need to make yourself more difficult to be attacked than the data you have is worth. You need to try and put as many steps, as many hurdles in place so that basically if they're walking down a neighborhood and there's a bunch of doors that are locked and one that's unlocked, you want to be the door that's locked because they're going to go after the one that's unlocked. All right. Keep in mind, we're going to do this on a regular basis. All of you new hires should go through through a cybersecurity training like this one. It should be part of your onboarding process. That's why that's why we're doing this, why we're doing it on a regular basis. That is everything that we had to cover. And Jen, is there anything else that you want to add?
We did have a couple of questions. Do we want to ask those? Someone asked if we're going to, during our annual reviews, include a risk assessment.
We will. What we've started doing is instead of just the annual reviews, is we're actually doing this monthly. So we're doing that monthly security scorecard to make sure that we don't think we'd like to get you up to date more than just annually.
Okay. And just a couple of questions about if the recording will be available.
What we're going to do is Jen's going to be in charge of sending that out. She's going to post that up. Once we do, we'll send you a link to it.
And that's it. Okay,
terrific. All right. Thank you, everybody. Obviously, you can see the contact information on the screen. If you have any questions, please, please, please reach out. It's much better to ask and have us tell you the answer is than ask afterwards going through. On that, thank you very much.